Damien Vaughn built his reputation the way architects raise skyscrapers, one ruthless calculation at a time, riveted together with other people's regrets. On the eve of the season's headline wedding, he sat inside his penthouse study while the Manhattan night glittered beneath floor-to-ceiling glass, a kingdom compressed into pixels of light. Yet victory tasted flat because there was still one audience he craved. Harper Quinn, the woman who'd vanished 8 years ago and left a wound Damien disguised as ambition. He reached for the weapon he'd crafted, an invitation the color of midnight embossed in platinum, sealed with the Vaughn crest. Tomorrow, when he married Celeste Whitmore in front of cameras and hedge fund royalty, Harper would watch from the pews and understand that walking away cost her the world. Damien pressed the envelope to his lips, a mock kiss of farewell, then handed it to his chief of staff with curt instructions: first-class courier, hand delivery only. As the door hush closed, thunder rolled above clear skies, rattling the windows as if the city itself questioned his certainty. Thunderstorms meant nothing to Damien. Numbers, mergers, and headlines did. He poured 20-year scotch, savoring the amber burn, and pictured Harper reading the invite beneath some dim, ordinary bulb. He didn't imagine twins with his eyes arguing over cereal. He didn't imagine her spine hardening with resolve. He imagined her regret because regret fit the narrative he needed to believe. Outside, the Empire State's beacon switched to white, signaling fair weather. Damien smiled, convinced even the skyline endorsed tomorrow's spectacle. In a Brooklyn walk-up scented with oatmeal and lavender cleaning spray, Harper tore open the black envelope while 2 5-year-olds flanked her knees, each desperate for a glimpse of grown-up secrets. The script inside carried the unmistakable arrogance she'd once found charming: Mr. Damien Vaughn and M.S. Celeste Whitmore requests the honor. Her pulse hiccuped, not because she feared Damien, but because the past she'd buried was pushing up through the soil, roots intact. Grace traced the silver crest with a sticky finger. Lena asked if the fancy paper meant a birthday party. Harper swallowed the urge to laugh or cry. For 5 years she'd raised them on whispered fables about hero dads sailing distant seas, waiting for the right harbor. The harbor was now a ballroom flooded with reporters. Harper crossed the kitchen, set the invitation beside overdue bills, and gazed at the girls, the same slate-blue eyes Damien saw every morning in his mirror, though he didn't yet know it. 8 years earlier she had tried to call, email, fly across states, only to hit walls silently erected by Vivian Vaughn. When the surveillance started, when job offers evaporated, Harper chose exile over warfare. But exile had a cost. The twin questions blooming in her daughter's eyes whenever classmates bragged about fathers at career day. Harper exhaled, a long slow note of decision. Safety bought with silence had expired. She knelt, palms warm against tiny shoulders. "We're taking a trip," she said, steady as a metronome. "Where?" Grace asked. "To show someone the truth," Harper answered. Truth fit easily on a train ticket. She booked 3 seats to Penn Station and dragged a suitcase from the closet, ignoring the tremble in her knees. The Plaza Hotel had hosted presidents, duchesses, and, as rumor insisted, a king incognito. Yet nothing in its marbled history equaled the shockwave that rippled through the ballroom when Harper stepped across the threshold. Navy silk clung to her like poised defiance. Twin daughters, identical curls, Vaughn eyes, held each hand as though they were tiny attorneys presenting evidence. Conversation fractured mid-sip, champagne sloshed onto tuxedo lapels. The string quartet, cue to launch Damien's grand entrance theme, screeched to confusion-laden silence. Celeste Whitmore, rehearsing a media-friendly toast from a small dais, froze with a crystal flute halfway to her lips. Damien, arriving through a side arch, saw 3 versions of himself across the room: the man he was, the boy he'd been, and the future he never imagined. Those slate-blue eyes hit him like a sucker punch, stripping away boardroom swagger until he looked almost ordinary. Reporters recovered first, lenses whirring, hashtags birthing in real time. Harper felt the hush drag toward hostility, yet her grip stayed gentle on her girl's hands. She promised herself she would not shield the truth behind anger. Truth needed light, not fury. Damien's security detail stepped forward, unsure whom to protect. No one moved. In that breathless stalemate, Harper's calm became the loudest statement in the room, and Celeste's immaculate smile shattered like sugar glass. Celeste broke the tableau, descending the dais with the precision of a woman taught that grace is armor. "Damien," she called, voice crystalline, "please inform me if I'm witnessing fiction." her composure threaded with panic as cameras zeroed in. Harper watched, empathy flickering. Celeste wasn't the enemy, just collateral in a war she never knew existed. Damien opened his mouth, but Harper's voice claimed the space first, low yet resonant. His daughters. 2 syllables carried enough voltage to short-circuit a $100 million wedding. Gasps fanned out, a bridesmaid sobbed into peony petals, a venture capitalist muttered about prenups. Celeste paled, mascara wobbling dangerously. She inhaled, found no air, and exited stage left with the dignity of a queen surrendering a crown too heavy to bear. The twins tightened their grip, confused by grown-up theater. Damien approached, stopping a respectful arm's length away as if invisible glass might shatter on contact. "We need proof," he managed, the certainty that once anchored his voice gone. "Tomorrow morning," Harper replied. "A public lab. No closed doors." Their eyes locked, hers unwavering, his turbulent. She felt a microscopic tug of pity, batted it aside. Justice required clarity, not comfort. As security guided them towards separate exits, Harper kissed each twin's forehead and whispered, "First step's done." Behind her, the empire Damien worshipped trembled as though built on sand, not steel. Journalists camped beneath Midtown Genomics' frosted windows long before sunrise, breath fogging against winter-tinged air despite it being mid-spring. Harper arrived in a practical trench coat, twins wearing butterfly backpacks and bravery stickers. Damien walked in alone, his customary entourage kept at bay by court-order-worthy glare. Inside, sterile white corridors hummed with equipment engineered to slice identity down to chromosomes. A technician swabbed cheeks. Quick, impersonal. And Damien found himself absurdly grateful for latex gloves masking the tremor in his hand. Waiting meant plastic chairs, weak coffee, and relentless silence. Harper pulled coloring books from her tote, the twins filled butterflies with improbable neon. Damien watched the crayons glide, realizing he'd never learned their favorite colors. 90 minutes later, a lab director emerged holding 2 crisp sheets, paternity probability 99.99%. Science had spoken, rumor became record. Damien read the numbers, then the girls' faces, then Harper's. A tectonic shift cracked open inside him, something between remorse and awe. Paparazzi outside erupted the moment they stepped back onto the sidewalk, but Damien's first instinct, shield the twins, overrode brand calculus. He wrapped an arm around them, blocking flashing bulbs with his body. Harper noticed, registered the reflex. A seed of possibility lodged in guarded soil. But possibilities were not forgiveness. They were just uncut keys waiting for locks. She hailed a taxi, buckled her daughters beside her, and vanished into midtown traffic, leaving Damien staring at his reflection in the retreating glass, a man with everything except the only things that mattered. Morning headlines detonated across financial networks like synchronized fireworks, only these sparks burned market value instead of sky. Von Air's secret twins send shares plummeting scrolled beneath red arrows as traders dumped Von Global stock in nervous herds. Inside the tower's 38th floor crisis suite, Damien faced a wall of muted monitors replaying last night's footage, Harper's calm, the twins' bewilderment, his own stricken gaze, on infinite loop. Executives chattered about damage control, expedited engagement to Celeste, hush-money rumors, accelerated buybacks to steady investor nerves. Damien barely listened. On his tablet glowed the metadata he'd unearthed at dawn, a lattice of call forwards and email rejections all tagged with his sister's admin credentials. 8 years of silenced messages formed a grim constellation, dot-to-dot proof of premeditated erasure. He scrolled through timestamps that overlapped with Harper's Boston address change, her OBGYN visits, her transfer to a lesser-paying job, the fallout of exile orchestrated under his corporate roof. Each swipe deepened the crack, splintering his self-image. The omniscient strategist blindsided by treachery sown into his own bloodline. An aide announced a noon board meeting to address leadership stability. Translation: a coup if he didn't act first. Damien dismissed the war room chatter, ordered every director to receive a confidential package within the hour, copies of Vivian's digital fingerprints, and strode toward the executive wing. He passed portraits of steel magnates and shipping tycoons that had once inspired him. Their painted eyes now looked accusatory. In the elevator, Damien caught his reflection, tie askew, stubble shadowing regret, and noted that power without integrity resembled a skyscraper without foundation. Impressive until the quake. The elevator doors parted on marble floors smelling of jasmine and imminent ruin. Vivian's office resembled a couture showroom crossed with a command bunker. Minimalist Italian furniture. Orchids curated to bloom year-round. Monitors streaming global indices. When Damien entered unannounced, she barely glanced up, too disciplined to display surprise. Damage control calls for United Optics, she began, voice silk over steel. He placed the dossier on her lacquered desk. Hologram paperweights reflected damning screenshots like tiny confessionals. Explain these, he said. Vivian skimmed the first pages, lashes flickering. Necessary interventions, she pronounced. You were infatuated with a liability, and ambitious in turn with no pedigree. I preserved both our brand and your future. Damien's restraint snapped. He slammed a palm onto the dossier, rattling crystal pens. You preserved an illusion and murdered trust. Vivian's smile chilled. Trust doesn't pay dividends. Stability does. She outlined her contingency, spin a narrative of Harper's opportunism, settle quietly, proceed with the Whitmore merger. The board would forgive moral gray if the share price recovered. Damien leaned in low enough that she smelled the coffee on his breath. The board already has this file. Noon vote. Bring your spin. Vivian's pupils contracted, tiger-cornered. You'd burn family for that woman? For truth, he answered, surprised at how right the word fell. Vivian rose, smoothing her skirt like armor. Blood remembers betrayal. Damien reached the door. So does history. As he left, he imagined dominoes, each deceit Vivian toppled now hurtling back toward her, momentum multiplied by years of concealment. The orchid petals behind him quivered in the subtle exhale of climate control, floral witnesses to a dynasty imploding. Board meetings at Vaughn Global were usually choreographed rituals, murmured consensus, catered soufflés, votes predicted before agendas printed. Today, tension coiled under the chandelier's diamond prisms. 11 directors sat at a horseshoe table polished to a mirror, each with Damien's dossier open to highlighted incriminations. Vivian entered last, gaze sweeping the room like a general surveying defectors. She launched into defense, safeguarding fiduciary duty, mitigating reputational risk, acting under implicit authority. Mid-speech, Damien played an audio clip through the room's speakers, Vivian instructing a private investigator to make sure the pregnant girl disappears quietly. Her voice echoed, monstrous in its casual cruelty. Gasps erupted. One director muttered a prayer. A motion to remove Vivian as COO for malfeasance took 90 seconds, the vote 9-2 in favor. Security approached, Vivian's exit stilettos clicked a staccato of fury, silence falling behind each step like shuttered vault doors. Before she reached the threshold, Damien added another revelation. Marcus Rowland, his college roommate turned chief legal counsel, had facilitated hush contracts. Marcus paled, resigned before anyone demanded it. With 2 signatures, Damien excised the rot from his empire, but the surgical success yielded no triumph, only a hollow ambulance siren of conscience. Shareholders would applaud, analysts would laud decisive leadership, yet he felt the marrow of his ambition exposed, vulnerable, and strangely liberated. Outside the boardroom windows, clouds banked over the Hudson like a developing bruise. Across the river, in a Jersey City motel room she'd booked under an alias 6 years prior, Harper sifted through a shoebox of memories while the twins napped in the hotel lobby's play corner. Ultrasound images folded soft with handling, eviction notices stamped urgent, pay stubs from temp agencies that vanished when Vaughn recruiters blacklisted her resume. She remembered sneaking into a half-priced internet cafe to email Damien one last plea, the message bouncing back within minutes. User mailbox unavailable. The terror of being pregnant and invisible had carved lines she still saw in the mirror each dawn. She recalled Vivian's menacing emissaries, well-tailored men insisting she sign non-disclosure agreements for everyone's good, their smiles cold as the winter wind scouring Boston streets. The night she fled, 10 weeks from delivery, she rode a greyhound beside ex-cons and dreamers, clutching a thrift store duffel and whispering lullabies to calm the kicks beneath her ribcage. Every mile widened the canyon between survival and justice, a canyon she vowed to bridge when the girls were old enough to hear why their lullabies carried undertones of apology. Now, watching them craft paper crowns in motel lighting, Harper weighed past pain against future clarity. Exposing Vivian was necessary, but healing required more than unmasking villains. It required dismantling the stories that villains wrote. She folded the ultrasound photo back into the box, pressed the lid closed, and texted Damien a single sentence: "Truth demands daylight. Meet us in Prospect Park at 3. Sending it, she felt the tremble transform into resolve. Damien stood outside his penthouse that evening, the skyline humming behind him like machinery he no longer needed. Realtors waited in the lobby with legal pads and valuation charts, but he'd already accepted an all-cash offer from a tech mogul eager for bragging rights. The sale proceeds would seed a trust for Lena and Grace. College, first homes, whatever dreams they named. He packed essentials into 2 suitcases, leaving bespoke suits and trophies for the estate service. At street level, the city smelled of hot pretzels and late-edition newspapers blaring Vaughn's sister ousted. Damien hailed a yellow cab, destination. A modest 2-story craftsman on a tree-lined block 3 subway stops from Harper's brownstone. The house needed roof repairs, the yard a fence, but its porch light flickered a welcome that felt painfully earnest. Neighbors watched from stoops, more curious than starstruck. To them he was just a weary man with too much luggage and not enough sleep. Inside, hardwood floors creaked like honest conversation. Damien unrolled a sleeping bag in the blank living room, stared at the ceiling's water stain shaped like a question mark, and let fatigue finally settle over adrenaline. Tomorrow he would meet Harper and the twins under Prospect Park's sugar maples. No entourage, no script. Only a father-hoping presence could do what power never had: earn trust. Outside, traffic lulled to distant hush, and for the first time since his first billion, Damien Vaughn slept without skyscraper walls guarding his dreams. Damien arrived at Prospect Park an hour before 3, pacing beneath a canopy of sugar maples whose spring leaves filtered sunlight into restless emerald waves. He carried nothing but a cooler of sandwiches he'd prepared himself, a detail that suddenly felt absurdly significant. When Harper appeared, twins bounding beside her, the breeze shifted. Even the distant carousel music seemed to hush. They chose a patch of grass half hidden from jogger traffic. Harper spread a thrift store blanket. Damien settled opposite, leaving a respectful gulf of plaid between them. Lena and Grace dove for the cooler, announcing that any meeting without snacks was illegal. The twins' laughter punctured tension like pinpricks of sunrise through fog, yet Harper's posture stayed guarded. Damien opened with apology, not grand statements, but specific acknowledgments: the birthdays he'd missed, the doctor appointments, the nights she'd feared footsteps in hallways he never walked. Each sentence felt like shedding armor. Honesty left him raw but weightless. Harper listened, eyes fixed on the girls threading dandelion stems into crowns. When she spoke, her voice held neither anger nor pity, only the quiet gravity of someone who has carried mountains. Regret can't raise children. Presence might. She outlined boundaries: no paparazzi, no boardrooms, no sudden promises delivered like stock forecasts. Damien nodded, accepting terms as if signing the most crucial contract of his life. Grace crawled into his lap with the natural confidence of children who find safety where adults hesitate. Lena placed a dandelion crown on his head and pronounced him Sir Silly Hair. Harper snorted a laugh that surprised even her. The sound loosened something tight in Damien's chest. They spent 2 hours trading small stories. Favorite cartoons? A lost tooth, Harper's mastered recipe for budget lasagna, and the simplicity of the exchange felt revolutionary. As shadows lengthened, Harper collected juice boxes, ready to leave. Damien asked, tentative, if he might walk them to the subway. She considered, then nodded. Under the arching elms, twin hands gripped his fingers for the first time, and the city's rumble receded until all he heard was the syncopated rhythm of 4 footsteps negotiating new ground. Parenthood unpacked itself in unexpected tutorials. On his third evening at the Modest Craftsman, Damien found himself YouTube searching easy ponytails for dads, phone wedged between his knee and the bathroom mirror while Grace wiggled on the closed toilet lid. His fingers, once precise enough to sign billion-dollar term sheets without rereading, fumbled over elastic bands. Harper watched from the doorway, arms crossed more in curiosity than judgment. Lena offered tips with the authority of a kindergarten stylist. Scrunch, twist, tighten, like shoelaces. The resulting loops listed like drunken commas, but the twins applauded, awarding Damien a glitter sticker that read "Brave Try." Harper almost reached to straighten the crooked tails, then stopped herself. Imperfection, she realized, was a better teacher than lecture notes. At bedtime, Damien read Where the Wild Things Are, altering voices so wildly that Grace wheezed with giggles. After lights out, he remained seated on the rug until their breathing evened, a silent sentinel for dreams he fell. Unworthy yet determined to protect. Downstairs, Harper brewed chamomile tea and found him staring at the dark ceiling, face stunned by ordinary wonder. They shared the tea, conversation soft, edges tentative. Damien revealed he'd enrolled in a parenting class at the community center under his middle name to avoid attention. He brandished a workbook titled Feelings Are Friends, cheeks reddening. Harper hid a smile behind her mug. She told him the twins feared thunder and loved mango popsicles. He confessed he feared failing them more than hostile takeovers. Night settled around them like a quilt stitched from cautious hope, and Harper saw the paradox. The man who once commanded armies of analysts now celebrated a sticker from a 5-year-old as if it were a congressional medal. When he left, he asked if he could take the girls to the library Saturday. Harper's yes was quiet but unequivocal, and as he walked home beneath streetlights humming like low promises, Damien knew every quarterly victory he'd ever claimed paled beside that single word permission. Saturday dawned bright, but the paparazzi's lenses glinted even brighter. Word of Damien's relocation had leaked. Vivian's revenge or simple tabloid ingenuity. Photographers lurked outside the branch library, lenses trained on the children's reading garden. Harper spotted them first, pulse spiking. Before panic could bloom, Damien crouched to twin eye level and spoke plainly about privacy, turning fear into a teachable puzzle. He then approached the reporters with quiet ferocity. No bodyguards, no bribes, just a father invoking basic decency. "Photograph me," he said. "Not them." He offered a brief statement. He had 2 daughters, no comment on corporate matters, respect their childhood. The firmness surprised the reporters. Scandal thrives on resistance, not reason. Some persisted, but their lenses followed Damien's broad shoulders to the parking lot instead of the butterfly mural, where Grace traced antennae with finger paints. Harper watched through the library windows, tension edging her spine until Damien returned and casually asked if anyone wanted hot chocolate. The twins cheered. Fear dissolved into marshmallow anticipation. That evening, he installed 8-foot hedges and a wooden gate between both properties. Paid for, he noted, from the sale of cufflinks he'd once considered heirlooms. Harper assisted, hammering lattice, sweat streaking her neck. Each thud rang like building a wall for them, not between them. Damien logged off social platforms, replaced corporate alerts with school calendar notifications, and issued cease and desist letters to tabloids that photographed minors. The headlines cooled. They always moved to hotter prey. Harper realized that, for perhaps the first time in his life, Damien Vaughn was protecting something without calculating ROI. When the gate's last hinge swung smooth, the twins christened the new enclosure Fort Family. Damien looked at Harper, wood dust clinging to his hair, and she glimpsed a man who'd trade dividends for domino painting any day. Trust didn't sprout overnight, but like the newly planted hedges, its roots were taking. A week later, a rogue thunderstorm rolled over Brooklyn, snapping power across the block. Darkness gulped the houses. Sirens dopplered in the distance. Harper lit candles, mind flashing to nights alone in Boston hospitals when blackouts amplified loneliness. A knock rattled the front door. Damien stood drenched, battery lantern in one hand, graphic novel anthology in the other. "Emergency story service," he quipped, though worry shadowed his eyes. Inside, candlelight danced on peeling wallpaper like timid hope. The twins burrowed into a quilt fort on the couch. Damien set the lantern at its apex, transforming drapery into star-studded sky. He read Zeta the Space Girl in exaggerated accents, pausing for question interludes about cosmic friendship. Thunder cracked, Gray squeaked, but Damien kept reading, voice steady as a lighthouse beam. Harper perched on the arm of the sofa, watching a tableau she once painted only in midnight imaginings, father-daughter's courage stitched between sentences. When lightning killed the lantern battery, they sat within soft candle haze, storm muted behind thick walls. Damien spoke quietly about sailors who named storms to tame them. Harper shared that she once named her panic Gremlin because villains shrink when called out. The twins giggled at the idea of gremlins wearing rain boots. Laughter braided relief into the dark. Eventually, the storm wandered off, leaving petrichor and calm. Lantern revived. Lights flickered on. But no one rushed to flip the switch. They remained in the blanket galaxy a moment longer, savoring hush. After tucking the girls into bed, Harper stood in the doorway whispering goodnight spells, then walked Damien to the porch. Rain still dripped from gutter edges, rhythm gentle now. He thanked her for the refuge. She thanked him for naming storms. For a breath, they lingered beneath the porch light's soft halo, the distance between gratitude and something deeper narrowing like receding clouds. Trust, however, doesn't settle without testing. 2 days after the blackout, Harper invited Damien for Sunday dinner. Roast chicken, sweet potatoes, Grandma Quinn's cornbread. Mid-meal, an alert pinged on Harper's phone. A gossip blog speculating about an engagement rekindled between Damien and Celeste. Old reflex clenched her chest. She pushed back from the table, fury simmering. Damien's fork froze mid-air. He knew that headline was from Celeste's PR flares meant to salvage her reputation. He placed the utensil down, met Harper's storm cloud eyes and said, "I can't control every echo, but I can show you volume knobs." He pulled out his phone, opened his call log. Celeste, last contact. A civil voicemail about returning monogram towels, time-stamped weeks old. He played it on speaker. A polite goodbye final. Harper's pulse steadied, but barbed wire words still rose. "How do I know you won't choose headlines again?" Damien inhaled. Answer mattered more than any investor query ever had. "You don't," he admitted. "So I keep showing up until your instincts catch up to reality." Grace, sensing tension, asked if grown UPS could have timeout corners too. Harper laughed, sharp, uncontrolled pressure valve releasing. Damien volunteered to sit in the timeout corner first. He exaggerated a sorrowful slump against the fridge. Twins declared the punishment complete only after he recited 3 apologetic dinosaur facts. Laughter rebooted the meal. Later, dishes washed, twins upstairs, Damien lingered in the doorway. Harper's hair was pulled into a messy knot, cornbread crumbs on her cheek. She looked real, reachable, terrifying. "I still don't trust you," she whispered. "Then I'll keep showing up," he replied, each word a promise etched not in marble but in exposed vulnerability. Harper let silence test the statement. It held. She stepped aside, letting him pass into the night, heartbeat loud yet oddly hopeful. Across the street his porch light blinked on as he entered, a small beacon flickering against doubt's vast horizon. September draped Brooklyn in early morning gold as Damien accompanied Harper and the twins to first-grade orientation, a rite of passage he'd once skimmed past in quarterly plans but now approached with a flutter that felt suspiciously like stage fright. The elementary school's red brick facade loomed less intimidating than the sea of parents armed with color-coded supply lists and practiced familiarity. Harper walked between the girls, but this time Damien matched her stride, a quiet assertion that the family geometry had shifted from triangle to unbroken line. Inside the cafeteria, folding tables overflowed with crayons and permission forms. A PTA volunteer pressed name tags onto anyone within reach. Lena insisted her tag read Space Explorer, Grace chose Dino Detective, and the volunteer, recognizing Damien, stammered before scrawling Just Dad on his sticker, an epithet that humbled him more than any honorary doctorate. During the principal's welcome spiel, Damien's attention split between Harper's soft nods and the twins' whispered commentary about classroom hamster rumors. He remembered board meetings where he'd tuned out human voices to calculate risk. Now, Risk was missing a fleeting joke about hamsters. Afterward, in the hallway chaos of art easels and cubby inspections, Harper excused herself to sort bus schedules, leaving Damien momentarily solo with the twins. A teacher approached, politely inquiring if Mr. Vaughn's schedule allowed chaperoning Thursday's nature walks. The question stunned him. The last Thursday nature walk he'd taken was a Korean merger tour disguised as a golf outing. He glanced at Lena, eyes bright at the prospect of leaf-collecting adventures. Without calculation, he said yes. Paperwork thrust into his hands felt heavier than bond prospectuses, yet profoundly more valuable. When Harper returned, surprise flickered at the sight of him brandishing volunteer forms like war trophies. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. "I printed schedules," he replied, tapping his jacket pocket. Ink still drying. In that mundane exchange, something enormous shifted. The twins saw two adults planning around their world rather than orbiting separate agendas. As they exited into crisp sunlight smelling of chalk dust and possibility, Grace slipped her hand into Damien's without prompting. The simple gesture resonated louder than applause in any boardroom Damien had ever conquered. 2 weeks later, while leaves flirted with amber at Fort Greene Park, an unexpected figure stepped through the new gate between houses. Celeste Whitmore, umbrella folded like a white flag despite clear skies. Harper, chalk drawing hopscotch squares with the girls, rose warily. Damien, sanding porch rails, froze mid-stroke. Celeste looked changed, hair pulled back in a modest braid, designer coat traded for a simple wool wrap, dignity intact but no longer weaponized. She greeted Harper first, voice calm, and asked permission to speak with the twins. Harper, trusting instincts sharpened by hardship, nodded. Celeste knelt to eye level, handed each girl a tiny sterling silver charm shaped like a compass, and said, "Keep this when the world spins fast. It reminds you where your heart points." No cameras clicked, her gesture was purely human, disarming. She then stood facing Damien without anger. "You and I were an arrangement," she said, "and arrangements dissolve. But these children are real, and reality deserves grace." Her words equal parts benediction and boundary, stripped remaining guilt from Damien's shoulders. He thanked her, meaning it. Celeste turned to Harper. "I once thought you destroyed my life," she admitted. "Truth is, the lie did." "I'm sorry." Harper's throat tightened, apology from a stranger cut deeper than curses from family. She accepted, quiet. Celeste departed as quickly as she arrived, escorting herself back through the gate. The twins studied their compass charms, whispering about hidden treasure maps. Harper watched Damien watch Celeste disappear down the sidewalk until the turn by the corner deli erased her silhouette. Only then did Harper realize her heartbeat wasn't racing. The ghost of betrayal had finally exhaled. Damien resumed sanding, but his shoulders were lighter, strokes sure. Harper crouched beside the hopscotch squares, chalk grazing concrete, and for the first time the game felt less like chalk lines between worlds and more like stepping stones toward the same horizon. That same evening, Vivian Vaughn's fury found its expression in a data leak timed to coincide with Asian markets, fabricated memos alleging Harper demanded million-dollar hush payments. Doctored wire transfers naming Damien's new trust fund a payoff account. Financial bloggers devoured the bait. By dawn, #HushTwingate trended alongside speculative graphs showing Vaughn Global's potential SEC exposure. Harper awoke to the tempest, phone buzzing like a hive of wasps. Her stomach dropped at headlines branding her a grifter. Damien arrived moments later, tie hastily knotted, laptop aglow with forensic reports disproving every doctored timestamp. The twins, sensing tension, hovered with plushies clutched tight. Harper's posture stiffened, old trauma of being painted villain reigniting. Damien touched her elbow, gentleness edged with resolve. She forged evidence. We can prove it, he said. Harper's faith wavered. She'd lived this movie before, where power twisted narrative while truth drowned unheard. But Damien's eyes held something new. Steadfast willingness to stand in fire beside her. He proposed a joint press conference. No polished statements, just raw documentation streamed live so edits couldn't spin. Harper hesitated. Public escalation invited fresh threats. But then she thought of Grace's compass charm and realized direction mattered more than comfort. She agreed, on one condition. The twins wouldn't appear on camera. Damien promised, and for once promises felt less like currency, more like covenant. They spent the morning compiling chain of custody logs, cryptographic hashes, third-party auditor affidavits. An arsenal of truth. As they worked, Harper noted Damien's meticulous focus mirrored boardroom acumen, except this time the balance sheet tallied integrity over profit. By noon, they headed to Midtown, leaving the twins with a trusted neighbor, unaware they were about to livestream a family's public reclamation of narrative from the jaws of scandal. The press conference unfolded inside a modest community center auditorium because Harper refused the optics of corporate glass. Local journalists rubbed shoulders with national correspondents, surprised by the venue's peeling paint and fluorescent hum. Damien took the podium first, flanked not by attorneys but by digital forensics experts ready to screen-share evidence. He acknowledged past failures, his arrogance, his absence, and then methodically dismantled the forged documents, mismatched time zones, SMTP headers pointing to disposable servers, forged author signatures reproduced from Vivian's archived emails. Next, Harper addressed the crowd, voice steady though palms shook behind the lectern. She recounted 8 years of silence imposed on her, emails bounced, jobs lost, investigators trailing her, but refused to label herself victim. I survived, she stated, but survival isn't victory, truth is. Her composure captivated even cynical tabloid stringers. She finished by urging viewers to fact-check before vilifying mothers or coronating billionaires. Applause erupted, unexpected and sincere. When Q&A opened, a reporter pressed Damien, would he press charges against his sister? He inhaled, gaze flicking to Harper, then answered, accountability isn't vengeance, it's necessary. The law will proceed. The clarity of that stance eclipsed financial chatter about share prices. Live feeds spiked, social sentiment swung. Within hours, analysts labeled the leak a desperate fraud, stock partially rebounded, but Damien barely noticed. Backstage, Harper exhaled, adrenaline crashing. Damien offered water. She accepted. Their fingertips brushed. An accidental spark, but neither pulled away. Outside, camera crews packed up, and the afternoon sun slanted through city, haze like a spotlight on a stage cleared for the next act. They rode back to Brooklyn in silence rich with exhausted relief. A silence that, for once, felt shared rather than imposed. That night Harper dreamed of doors, hundreds of them. Slamming, opening, creaking. She woke before dawn to find the house still. Shadows pooling at corners like potential. Padding downstairs, she discovered Damien asleep on the living room sofa, having volunteered to guard the front in case paparazzi returned. A compass charm, borrowed from Grace, dangled from his fist, its tiny needle trembling with each slow breath. Harper froze, heart swelling with emotions too layered for language. Gratitude, fear, dawning affection. She fetched a spare blanket, draped it over his shoulders, and watched his brow smooth instinctively at the warmth. In that fragile hour, she saw not the architect of past pain but a man mid-translation, rewriting himself in a dialect of constancy. She returned upstairs, slid between her daughters, and felt their small bodies curl toward her like commas seeking completion. Dawn eventually seeped through curtains, painting the ceiling pale gold. Downstairs, Damien stirred, unfolding from uneasy sleep to the scent of coffee Harper brewed strong enough to steady any apology. They shared mugs on the stoop, street just waking, dog walkers, bakery vans, the promise of fresh bread. No grand declaration surfaced. Instead, Harper handed him the spare house key. For emergencies, she said. He closed his fingers around the metal, eyes shining at the mundane gift. A taxi honked in the distance. Pigeons fluttered from lampposts. Life resumed, but its rhythm felt recalibrated, syncopated to heartbeat rather than headlines. Harper glanced at Damien's profile, silhouetted against dawn, and realized they had crossed a threshold subtle yet irrevocable. The moment when possibility starts rhyming with trust. Behind them, the twins giggled upstairs, chorus to a day waiting to be claimed. The compass needles, both metal and metaphor, pointed unerringly home. News cycles spun for days, dissecting Vivian's indictment on wire fraud and intimidation charges. But inside Brooklyn's hedged enclave, the only headline that mattered was family finds normal. With the legal storm delegated to prosecutors, Harper proposed an unglamorous celebration. A picnic at Red Hook waterfront where container cranes painted crimson silhouettes against the harbor. Damien packed PB&J sandwiches with military precision while the twins argued over which plushie deserved first-class seating in the cooler. At the pier, they spread a patchwork quilt that had survived college dorms and motel floors, its frayed corners framing smudged chalk rainbows courtesy of the girls. Harper lounged back, eyes half closed, letting the briny breeze untangle months of tension. Damien pointed out Lady Liberty in the haze, prompting Grace to wonder aloud if freedom meant doing whatever you want. He shook his head and answered softly that freedom meant having nothing left to hide. The words lodged in Harper's chest like a clean note vibrating after dissonance. Mid-afternoon, a gust of wind ripped a stray tourist's kite, sending it spiraling into a sycamore. Lena gasped, so did the owner, a boy no bigger than the twins. Without hesitation, Damien scaled the low tree, suit jacket abandoned, loafers scraping bark. Cheers erupted as he freed the neon dragon-shaped kite and guided it down to the boy, who grinned gap-toothed thanks. The spontaneous heroics impressed the twins less than the scrape blooming on Damien's forearm. They fussed over band-aids like mini paramedics. Harper watched the scene, realization dawning that Damien's reflex now bent toward service rather than spectacle. Sunset draped vermilion across water, and the family lingered until container ship horns signaled evening tide. Packing up, Harper felt lighter, as though the harbor wind had carried off the last shards of doubt. On the subway ride home, Lena rested her head on Damien's shoulder. Grace yawned into Harper's lap, and strangers smiled at the tableau that read simply, "Parents, children, peace." No caption required. Autumn progressed, leaves trading emerald for rust, and with them Harper noticed subtle shifts in Damien's habits that spelled permanence. He no longer spoke in fiscal quarters but in school semester units, parent-teacher conference next Wednesday, winter concert mid-December. The calendar, pinned beside Harper's fridge, bore his neat handwriting, color-coded, violet for library days, green for playground repairs. He volunteered to help fund through the PTA anonymously at Harper's insistence. One chilly Friday, Damien escorted the twins to their first school dance, technically a fall frolic, heavy on apple juice boxes. He wore a flannel shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal the parenting class wristband he'd forgotten to remove. Harper arrived later, spotting him in the gymnasium coaching a gaggle of first graders through the electric slide, his coordination questionable, enthusiasm absolute. The scene detonated warmth in her chest stronger than any Valentine gesture. Post-dance, while kids chased sugar highs, Harper and Damien loaded folding chairs onto a rolling cart, sides brushing in comfortable rhythm. She teased him about his two-step and he feigned indignation, claiming he'd nailed the slide portion if not the electric. Their laughter echoed off cinder-block walls, an acoustic confirmation that ease had finally joined honesty at their table. That night, after tucking the twins in, Harper lingered on the porch as cold stars emerged. Damien stood beside her, breath visible in frosty puffs. "I used to think legacy meant buildings with my name," he said, eyes on the starlit canopy. "Turns out legacy is bedtime stories echoing after lights out." Harper's reply was a whisper stolen by wind, "That's one we can build together." No kiss followed, no cinematic swell, only hands finding each other in pockets, an interlaced promise warming chill October air. Thanksgiving arrived in aromas, sage stuffing, cinnamon-laced yams, roast turkey. Damien brined with laboratory meticulousness. Harper's tiny kitchen became mission control, twins fashioning place cards shaped like rockets, Damien threading twinkle lights around the doorway because holiday magic apparently required illumination. Celeste sent a cordial text from Provence, photo of sunrise over lavender fields. Harper smiled, grateful for the civil détente. Even Marcus, awaiting sentencing, mailed handwritten apologies on lined prison stationery, reminders of roads not taken. At 4 p.m., neighbors filtered in bearing potluck dishes, drawn by the warm chaos spilling from Harper's windows. Mr. Alvarez from next door brought empanadas. The Burkes upstairs supplied pumpkin pie. Laughter ricocheted between walls once steeped in caution. Before carving, Harper tapped her glass for quiet. She thanked the village that had protected anonymity when she needed it and embraced truth when she chose it. Then she surprised herself by turning to Damien, voice hitching, and thank you for showing the girls that courage isn't loud, it's consistent. Eyes glistened around the table, none more than Damien's. He started to reply, but Grace interrupted, insisting everyone state a gratitude. When it was Damien's turn, he cleared his throat, gaze sweeping faces of friends who'd become family. I'm grateful for second drafts, he said. They remind us even stories written in ink can be edited for the better. Applause mingled with the clatter of serving spoons. Dinner unfolded, messy and marvelous, gravy spills juxtaposed with heartfelt toasts. Harper watched Damien help Mrs. Burke with her walker, later tying Mr. Alvarez's grandson's shoelace. Each small kindness stitched him tighter into the community quilt. That night, dishes stacked, guests departed, Harper and Damien surveyed the surrender of their kitchen, crumbs, crayon marks, empty bottles, victorious ruins of togetherness. Exhausted, they laughed until tears came, leaning on each other for balance, realizing collaboration wasn't just functional, it was joy. December snow dusted rooftops and Brooklyn glowed with fairy light stringers. On the twins' 6th birthday, Harper orchestrated a living room planetarium. Black construction paper sky punched with constellation holes, flashlight shining cosmos onto walls. Damien engineered a handcrafted wooden rocket assembled in clandestine late-night hours, each panel sanded smooth as promise. Party guests wore foil-wrapped astronaut helmets, including Damien, whose headpiece featured a duct-tape visor Lena insisted added authenticity. Mid-party, Harper retreated to the hallway for a breather, overwhelmed by the symphony of squeals. She found Damien kneeling, adjusting the rocket's stabilizer wing. He glanced up, cheeks flushed with exertion and, perhaps, anticipation. You built their world, he murmured, gesturing to stars flickering across ceiling. Harper corrected him softly, we built it. Their eyes held longer than politeness required, the hallway seemed to contract, heartbeat loud. Before either spoke, Grace burst in, brandishing a cupcake like a diplomatic envoy demanding parental participation. Frosting negotiations ensued. However, later when the last balloon sagged and the twins slumbered beneath glow-stick constellations, Harper joined Damien on the couch. Snowflakes pricked the window, city hush profound. Harper retrieved a small wrapped box. Inside, Damien's long-lost fountain pen Harper had salvaged years ago from their first apartment's junk drawer. She'd kept it as relic, now restored and engraved with 4 initials, L.G.H.D. Damien traced the letters, emotion thick. He whispered her name, voice hoarse, and Harper leaned in, forehead resting against his. No grand declarations followed, only quiet proximity, but in its stillness something irrevocable clicked into alignment, 2 orbital paths converging by gravitational choice rather than collision. The final test arrived not in scandal but sickness. January flu scorched through classrooms, first Lena, then Grace, and finally Harper fell ill, fevers, coughs, exhaustion. Damien mobilized like a medic commander. He converted the living room into quarantine HQ, vaporizer humming, thermometers lined, soup simmering. He negotiated with his board to attend strategy sessions remotely, camera off, because he wore a cartoon sloth apron smeared with cough syrup stains. For 5 sleepless nights he hovered between sickbeds, recording dosage times, whispering stories of immune cells portrayed as brave knights. Harper, delirious with fever, woke once to find him dozing upright in an armchair, fingers entwined with hers on the blanket. She noted the creases of worry carving his face and felt an unexpected surge of safety. By day 6, temperatures dropped, energy returned in the form of twin requests for pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Damien complied, batter-splat artistry reminiscent of Jackson Pollock. Harper emerged from her room, still pale but upright, and surveyed the domestic battleground, empty NyQuil bottles, towers of used tissues, yet remarkable neatness where Damien had quietly cleaned. She approached him at the stove, placed a hand on his sleeve, and whispered a simple, loaded phrase, "Stay tonight." He turned, eyes searching hers for subtext, found none, and nodded. The twins, munching syrup-soaked stegosaur tails, cheered for reasons they couldn't articulate but unmistakably sensed. That evening, after dishes and story time, Harper and Damien tucked the girls in together. Grace tugged Harper closer and asked, "Is Dad staying every night?" Harper brushed hair from a cooling forehead and answered, "Yes, honey. Every night." In the dim, Damien's breath caught audible. Downstairs, they brewed tea, but conversation dissolved into a kiss, gentle yet decisive, carrying the taste of mint and relief. Upstairs, two little girls sighed contentedly in sleep, comets finally orbiting a stable star. Outside, winter wind prowled streets, but inside, hearth warmth radiated undeniable permanence. February's chill receded into slushy March, and with it came an unexpected overture from the Vaughn Global Board, a unanimous request that Damien resume his post as CEO, citing market confidence restored by his transparency. The letter arrived on monogrammed stationery, heavy with the promise of power reclaimed. Damien read it at Harper's kitchen table while steam coiled from her chipped ceramic teapot. He considered the skyline, the prestige, the intoxicating rush of billion-dollar chess, but then he pictured permission slips, dandelion crowns, and the fever-flushed night Harper had asked him to stay. He drafted a response that stunned even himself. He would return only as an unpaid advisor, 1 day per week, and only if the company invested $10 million into a scholarship program for single parents in STEM, the Harper Quinn Initiative. The board balked, crunched numbers, then capitulated when shareholders applauded the brand lift of altruism. Harper learned of the deal when Damien presented her with legal papers naming her chair of the initiative's advisory council. The twins celebrated by drawing their concept of scholarship, rocket ship classrooms, and dinosaur professors. On launch day, they cut a ribbon in a high school gym converted into a community resource hub, local press filming free of clickbait spin. Harper delivered a speech about resilience, voice steady as the hardwood beneath her heels. Damien stood beside her, not spotlighted but illuminated by pride, realizing that stewardship felt richer than ownership. That night he found Harper on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at rain beads racing down window panes. He joined her in silence until she whispered, "Legacy, huh?" He nodded, answering with a soft kiss that tasted of peppermint tea and possibility. In the quiet afterward, they both knew a different empire had just been founded. One built on futures rather than profits, on learning rather than leverage. April ushered in cherry tree confetti along the sidewalks, and the twins begged for a father-daughter dance now that their school had upgraded the spring formal. Harper helped them choose satin ribbons. Damien practiced waltz steps in the living room shadows after bedtime, counting softly so as not to wake them. The night of the dance, Harper waited in the car, watching through rain-blurred windows as Damien, clad in a simple gray suit, guided his daughters beneath balloon arches. Inside, he discovered parent volunteers streaming the event for distant relatives. On screen at home appeared a surprising viewer, Celeste Whitmore, dialing in from Provence, sending digital hearts. Later, Celeste posted the clip of Damien twirling Lena under twinkling lights with the caption, "The best deals are signed on the dance floor." The internet swooned not at scandal, but at redemption. Harper, scrolling afterward, felt no jealousy, only warmth that their once entangled lives had achieved separate orbits of peace. Days later, Harper found Damien in the backyard after dawn, repainting the rocket ship he'd built for the twins. Sawdust flecked his hair, morning sun penciled shadows under his lashes. She brought coffee, set it on the sawhorse, and leaned against the fence watching him. Spontaneity seized her. She dipped a finger in blue paint, streaked a marquee line across his cheek. He retaliated with a dab on her nose, laughter rising like birds from a hedgerow. The twins burst outside, shrieking at the grown ibis mess, joining the paint war until all four sported impressionist splatters. As they hosed off in the back garden, Harper caught Damien's gaze and saw in it a question forming. unspoken but powerful as thunder before a spring storm. That question crystallized a week later, on a Tuesday so ordinary it almost eluded memory. Spaghetti Tuesday, laundry half-folded, Harper humming off-key while sorting mismatched socks. Damien called her name from the living room. She entered to find lights dimmed, constellation projector scattering soft galaxies across walls. On the rug stood a shoebox diorama the twins had crafted, miniature versions of their family. 4 clay figures inside a cardboard house painted yellow. Beside it lay Damien on one knee, holding not a diamond but the train tickets she'd once returned to the mantel, a symbol of journeys interrupted and resumed. "We missed the train 8 years ago," he said, voice trembling. "But the tracks are still ours if you'll ride with me." Harper's lungs forgot oxygen. The twins, hidden poorly behind the couch, squealed stage whispers, "Say yes, Mommy." Tears blurred the faux galaxies until stars streaked comet-like. Harper knelt, took the tickets, and finally spoke. "Yes, on one condition. We promise never to close another door without both of us on the same side." Damien's answering smile rivaled any skyline. The twins exploded from hiding, showering them with homemade confetti of construction paper hearts which stuck to spaghetti sauce on Harper's sleeve. Dogs barked down the block, the refrigerator hummed, life pulsed unfiltered. It was perfect. They married in late May under the canopy of Prospect Park's boathouse, renting it for less than the cost of Damien's former monthly haircut. Harper wore a tea-length dress borrowed from Mrs. Burke's eldest, Damien a navy blazer the twins had sewn secret patches into, one heart, one dinosaur. Guests brought potluck dishes instead of registry gifts. Celeste mailed lavender sachets from France for table favors. Marcus, granted early release for cooperation, sent a donation to the scholarship fund, a note of contrition folded inside. Vivian watched coverage from a minimum security facility's television room, disdain curdling into something that might one day resemble regret. As vows echoed across the lake, ducks quacked like off-key witnesses, and the twins scattered petals down the aisle, giggling when they ran out halfway and resorted to tossing handfuls of grass. Harper and Damien read promises they had written together after bedtime one night, commitments to honesty, patience, and twice-a-year family technology detox weekends. When the officiant pronounced them, the audience didn't merely clap, they cheered, a cathartic roar of community that had witnessed loss transmuted into love. A local jazz trio played What a Wonderful World while everyone danced on the flagstone terrace, dusk air perfumed by lilacs. Harper's father, once estranged by distance and misunderstanding, spun his daughter under string lights across from the man she chose. Watching them, Damien felt the final puzzle piece slide into place, the image complete, a portrait not of wealth but of wholeness. Summer night crickets chirped as the newly blended family sprawled across the roof of their craftsman. Hot cocoa in enamel mugs despite the warmth. Damien adjusted a simple telescope he'd purchased secondhand, aiming it at Jupiter's bright eye. Lena peered through first, gasping at moons strung like beads. Grace followed, claiming she saw a dinosaur constellation. Harper lay back on a blanket, palm brushing Damien's. He squeezed lightly. Below, the city murmured sirens, late trains, lovers arguing on sidewalks. But up here, the universe felt intimate. "Remember when you asked if freedom was doing whatever you want?" Damien said to Grace. "I figured it out. Freedom is this." He gestured to roof shingles digging into their spines, cocoa skin forming on mugs, daughters debating asteroid names. Harper turned toward him, moonlight etching her smile in silver. "Home," she corrected gently. "Freedom is knowing we're already home." A breeze rustled leaves carrying the faint scent of magnolia down the street. Somewhere a late bus hissed to a stop, life's mundane symphony played on. Yet atop that roof, time slowed, curling around them like pages of a story settling onto its final line. The twins dozed, and Damien carried them inside, tucking them beneath glow-in-the-dark stars that no longer stood in for absent dreams but decorated a life fully present. He returned to the roof where Harper waited, holding out her hand. They lay together, stars wheeling overhead, heartbeat beside heartbeat, a family that had rewritten ruin into refuge. Far below, new trains rattled on old tracks, but this time every seat they needed was occupied, together, moving forward, destination endless horizon. If you watched this far, please kindly subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment your thoughts below. Your support would really help us grow. Thank you and see you in the next one if you subscribed.